Hello, Clint.
Whoa. It wasn't me. I didn't touch anything. Just don't look at me. It wasn't me. Hello, Play Expo 2024. Guess what? We're going to go with the backup mics. Okay, right. Did you all have a good night last night? Who's here today for the first day? Who's on day one? Okay, yeah, new faces, nice, brilliant. Well, enjoy your Sunday with us. Later on, we've got a talk with Qbert legend Warren Davis. That's happening on this stage. And obviously going to have a fantastic time in the hall itself. It's amazing. And the traders room this year is incredible. Anyway, that is then, and this is now. My name is Mikey. This is your first guest of the day. So it's my pleasure to introduce, and I'm going to give him a lovely backup mic, because I no longer trust those mics. As we welcome Bullfrog Lionhead and now 2 Point Studio legend, please welcome Mr. Gary Carr! Keep it coming! Keep going, he's nearly here! Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Hello everyone.
Okay, Gary, well, let's go back to the beginning, if that's okay, because I've seen
Time ago.
Yeah, well, I've seen a few interviews, and it all starts with the software, but I want to start with the man.
All right.
So, where did you grow up?
Scarborough.
Nice
Seaside
there.
town. Oh. Yeah, it's the other side of, pretty much the other side of the country, but yeah, seaside town.
Okay.
Lots of arcades, yeah.
Did that shape kind of your thinking that you were going and playing the arcade machines?
No.
Oh.
I did play in the arcades, but I never thought I'd do this for a living. I wanted to be an artist, so I wanted to do, I don't know, get to TV,
Yeah.
graphic design, that kind of thing.
And what was your, when you were a kid, what was your first actual, what we call a computer or console? What was the first?
My first computer was one of those family grandstand Pong computers that we all plugged in behind the TV set. The first computers that probably you guys started with is what I worked with. So I started in '85, so I was on the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC. That was my work machine, not my home machine. So I kind of, they weren't around really when I was a kid.
Yeah. So you had the grandstand, and presumably at that point that was, you were playing, people were playing games in their front room. So if you wanted to play a game, Mum had to turn off Emmerdale. That was
Exactly. You couldn't, basically.
Yeah.
You all had to play, which is quite nice, because so you played with your parents, but there was nothing much better than that, really, at the time.
Yeah.
This would be about 81, something like that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really home computers then. Not that I remember. Probably some of you more experienced gamers than myself can remember something back in the early 80s, but I didn't have anything. We couldn't afford it anyway, I don't think.
Well, this was 1981, so how old were you in 1981?
I'd have been about 16.
Okay, so you were 16
Yeah.
when, you know, the Thompson Twins, Spandau Ballet?
Yeah.
Were you into music at the time?
Yeah, punk.
Punk.
It's an old punk, really, yeah.
So who were you listening to?
Well, like everyone, Pistols, Clash, The Damned, Stranglers, that kind of thing, yeah.
Do you like Joy Division?
I do love Joy Division, yeah. I love Joy
I
Division.
knew I liked.
Yeah. I loved all the Manchester music, actually.
Yeah.
Smiths after that, of course.
Yeah.
Stone
So
Roses.
Was there was kind of creativity in the air. I mean, we was talking yesterday about how there was that kind of, you know, bedroom coders boom type thing.
Yeah.
Did you feel that sort of creativity, like urgency to start making things?
I mean, there weren't that many professional... I was really lucky. The first company I worked for, which was Palace Software, was a professional games company when nobody was a professional games company, because they were a film company. Because I joined them to do films. Yeah. And they just said to me, you can either be a runner and try and get your way into the film industry that way. Because I made some films when I was at college, art school.
Just tell me about that just quickly, if you
Yeah.
would, then, before we go to what. So what you went to do filmmaking at college, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I went to graphic design and get into advertising, thinking that was a commercial way to make my art make money. And I hated it, because it was full of people trying to teach people how to, I don't know, sell cigarettes to kids. It was all advertising. It was really brutal in the early 80s. Yeah. So I found a film camera, and there was an editing suite down in the basement of the art school, and no one was using it. So I made 4 films. 2 were live action, and 2 were animated. I basically was just cutting frames of video and animating drawings. So I made 2 animated films and 2 live action films, and I just wrote to all the film companies to try and get work. I wasn't really a gamer, if I'm honest. I played games in the arcades, but I didn't have games machines, so I wasn't really on that cusp of getting into the industry to being a fan. I was basically just trying to get a career in movies.
Being creative.
Kind of, yeah. So when I joined the film company, they said, well, you can go through that door if you actually want to make something really quickly, because it's our games division, and you know we don't know much about games. So I was kind of in there in the early days of making games for Palace Software. This has been about the 80s, I think.
Just, sorry, I keep dragging you back to this stuff, it's just interesting. One of these animations you were doing.
Yeah.
So you were recording a frame.
Yes.
And then redrawing.
So I would basically draw. I set the camera up like a rostrum camera, facing it down, and I just draw the cells, and I just film it, and then I go into the editing suite and cut in 24 frames a second, and I couldn't draw 24 frames a second. I was drawing about 8.
Right.
So I did like 8-frame animation. So I made two 2-minute animated films and then 2 live-action films. So I realised it's a lot quicker to film people than it is to do all these little drawings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just took that around all the film companies and animation studios in London, and then ended up getting a job at Palace Films.
Right, and that's where I picked up the kind of official biography, and I've seen a few interviews where it was like you can either go into the film side or you can go into the development side. When you went into Palace Software and started going into the development side, how experienced were you as a developer at that point?
No, nothing. I'd never. In fact, at art school, I failed the computer graphics section of the course because I couldn't be bothered to sit there and wait for the thing to render out some very basic graphics. So I just didn't go, and that was the only part of my course I didn't pass. I just thought it was too slow back then. I mean, obviously we were on these big, massive computers, and it was just really, really slow to make anything. So I just didn't bother.
And what was the state of kind of computer-aided design at the time? Was it? I'm trying to think of it things like Paintbox or what?
No, that's in before then. I mean, there was Quantel Paintbox was in TV at the time.
Yeah.
So the Channel 4 logo was one of the famous first early Quantel Paintbox animations, which was only moving around, cubes into a little animation, and that was just amazing. When I joined Palace, there was a genius called Stan Skembry who wrote all the procedural work there and all the kind of bespoke sprite draws and character background engines, all written by him. So he just gave me the tools and I just used those. I mean, they were just basically ready to go. But there wasn't a commercially available, that I was aware of, tool that was being used. I think the first thing commercial I used was something called Wigmore, which was probably about 86, and it had a mouse, which was amazing. And you could do the loading screens with it. It was actually able to you could paint.
You could draw.
You could draw with it, yeah. But until then, no, I don't think we had any commercial tools.
So Palace Software, one of your early games is Barbarian, is that right?
Yeah.
So that's, that's...
Does anyone remember Barbarian? Yeah.
I think you're on safe.
I'm looking at some older people in the back there. Yeah, that was basically appealing to 14-year-old boys, really. I mean, it was just like, it had everything from Page Street Girls on the cover, it had Wolf from... Gladiator wasn't even a thing. We found the guy because there was an advert out in 1985, I think it was, for Strongbow Cider, and he was just a warrior guy. And we tracked him down and said, "Oh, would you want to do a cover of the game?" And my boss at the time, Steve Brown, he was massively a sun reader. This is a different time for him. This is no PC. And he just used to have calendar girls all over the walls. And it was just an excuse for him to hire a calendar girl to be in a game. And
don't worry, this is Blackpool, it's still like that. Don't...
I was a really right-on young man, right? And I just thought it was appalling, but it worked.
It did, because that was a really iconic design.
Every kid had the poster on their wall.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going into kebab shops and it was on the wall, and just think, I've made it. I'm like, there's a poster of my game on a kebab shop wall.
And the Barbarian, that's the one where it's quite violent, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can slice people's...
So, Steve said he was into Frank Frazetta, So he wanted that kind of style, you know, like the movies as well, like Conan the Barbarian. He wanted that kind of feel, but he didn't really give me much else to go on. He just said, a head's got to come off, and we're going to put some breasts on the cover of the game. And he said, just go and make the game. And it was meant to be a bigger game, but we ran out of time. So it was meant to be a dungeon crawler, really. And then the only thing we got done was all the fight sequencing, and we didn't have time to do the dungeon crawling, so we just turned it into a combat game.
Because it is really fluid, isn't it? It's like a really fluid game.
Well, we had as many attack moves as defence moves, so it was one of the only ones at the time where there was a bit of skill to it. But I think anyone that played it realised you just got to roll people into the corner and keep hacking and eventually you win. But I think we made the whole thing in about 3 months, on all versions. Yeah, I think
wow.
whether it was BBC or all the 8-bit.
So were you working on all those different ports?
I did all the art animation. All the animation is me and Steve. We filmed, we set up camera, we filmed ourselves fighting side on. We did a big grid on the wall behind us so we could take reference points to turn it into pixels, and we filmed the whole thing, falling on mattresses on beneath us. I've still got the film.
Have you still got that?
Yeah. It's just me with a little ponytail. And we built the swords. His dad built the swords, a big wooden swords. We put lead in the base of the helm of the sword to make them really heavy.
Yeah.
And we also filmed the things we couldn't do. We filmed Red Sonja, which was a film, Bridget Nielsen film, and we just put white acetate on the screen and traced moves off that. Because some of their fights were more side on. So that the things we couldn't do, we just copied off that movie. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting because
copyright wasn't a thing.
A couple of years, later, people that sort of motion capture.
That was early motion capture.
Yeah,
That was.
but you were doing it then.
Yeah, just cheating basically. Yeah.
So where were they based, Palace?
So Scala Cinema in London. It's quite a famous venue actually for gigs and things. It's kind of a really arty. Was owned by Palace Movie Company.
Right.
So we worked in the Bell Tower. In the centre of King's Cross, in the mid-80s, which was taking your life into your own hands. Mid-80s in London, it was quite scary.
Do you remember what it was like to work there at that time, being so young? I mean, some of the. I'm sure you can't tell us, Gary. Was it good?
It was good. Although I do remember when I got the job in London, of course, being a northerner. My mum was telling people, oh, he's gone to London, he's got a job in London, he's made it for himself. And I remember my first day getting to the Scala Cinema, there was rather unpleasant smells around the door area, and there was a rather disgusting aerosol drawing on the door, and there was some drug paraphernalia around I just thought, yeah, I've really made it, haven't I? This is good.
Like I say, Gary, this is Blackpool, we still got all that. So you're working on those different systems. Was the money? We hear about developers driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff at the time. Was there good money in it? I mean, I presume.
It's weird. My career's been like that, money-wise. My first job at Palace was amazing because we were on royalties. Because it was a film company, they had a system. For paying people royalties. So for every copy of that game, I got 1.5% royalty.
That's brilliant.
So in my first year, I earned enough money to buy a detached house. Straight out, I didn't. I spent it on beer. And going out. But I could have done. And then games doesn't really have a royalty system. If you're not the IP owner, you work for a company and the company they'll pay you whatever you're worth, and usually you jump around to try and get more and more money or a better offer. But no, so that was a great time because I was on royalties, so I was being paid fairly for success. But then you end up joining companies where the IP is belong to either the publisher or the company owner, and you're just paid a salary.
Yeah.
So it is not easy. Games is a tough business you generally have to own your IP to see the fruits of your labour. Really.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to Bullfrog in a second, but I just want to ask you a question about that time, sort of, late 80s, when you're developing on all those machines. Which of the machines, you guys at Palace, which of the machines that were available were the ones that you were like, oh yeah, I'll enjoy working on this machine, but then is there another machine where you think, oh, this is hard work, this bloody thing,
Okay, if we're talking 8-bit...
Yeah, 8-bit from the... Yeah.
I enjoyed designing for the Spectrum, because the challenges of the colour clashing and the attribute clashing was just a real talent if you could avoid that. The one that had the most beautiful palette was the Amstrad CPC. That was just beautiful. The Commodore 64, there wasn't even red. There was pink and brown. They were your colours for anything blood related. Commodore 64 was, I suppose, the out of those three machines, the performance was there. So you kind of got a decent frame rate, and it was pokier than the other two. So you generally got more of the experience you were after.
Yeah.
But I think to design for and work on, I love the Spectrum. For the palette, the Amstrad. But the Commodore 64 was I don't know if I'm offending anyone, the daddy of those three, really. That was the kind of lead machine out of those.
Yeah, and it sounds great as well, doesn't it, the Commodore?
It does, yeah. It's got a kind of I love the TAC2 controller as well. That to me was the best. What was your controller for the TAC? Do you remember the TAC2? It was just had a really solid, I hate to say the word shaft, but it just didn't break. It was just a really cool joystick. And also designing on joysticks, that's how mad it was. You didn't, and also you were designing on a machine you could buy in a shop. Yeah. On Barbarian, we went through so many Spectrums, I had to go buy them from Tottenham Court Road, and we were running out. Tottenham Court Road was running out of Spectrums because we were just burning through them.
Yeah.
Because there was just no cooling system really for them. So they were on 24/7.
Yeah.
So they had about a 2-week shelf, work life.
Really?
Yeah, and we were just throwing them out the window into this sort of space out the back of the offices. And at one point we had to go shimmy down the drain pipe, throw them back up through the window, and try and build a new Spectrum out of all these
All the bits.
All the bits, yeah.
Blimey, what an image. So, at the end of the decade, you go on to, what brought about the move to Bullfrog? How did that come about?
So I'd moved out of London. I'd done 4 years in London, decided I needed to get out of London. So I moved to Aldershot, of all places. And Guildford is a 10-minute drive from Aldershot. And somebody said to me, "Oh, have you heard of Peter Molyneux?" And I went, no. He said, "Oh, he's doing that game Populous." And I played the cover disc. It was on the one, I think. The cover disc was brilliant. I went, "Oh, I love the game." He said, "Oh, you should go and see it." So I just popped in to say hello because I thought, we're in the business. Anyway, for some reason he thought I was after a job, which I wasn't, because he didn't pay much money, and I was on more money where I was. But he had this way and this charm, and he just sort of said, "Oh, no, come work for us. We're going to be brilliant. We're going to be amazing." So I did join on about half the money I was on, which is stupid, but I didn't have to travel into London anymore. So I just joined Bullfrog for that reason. But they were so backward. It was ridiculous. Peter was this enigma of a bloke, because we were working in this attic above a hi-fi shop, and they were all chain smokers as well. There was like 5 other guys.
Right.
So I was the 6th member, and they were all chain smoking and working in the most horrible conditions. And Peter just said, "We're the best games company in the world." And I thought, "No, you're not." Yes, he did. "This is rubbish." But he was right. I mean, there were some brilliant, talented people there.
So these 6 guys in this attic,
Yeah.
so you were into punk.
Yeah.
Did you have a...
Big Mohican, yeah. Massive Mohican up here somewhere. They were all very different. I was sort of settled down. I had a mortgage, weirdly, quite young age, because I was earning quite good money. These were all people that had no other life. They just programmed and just stayed in that room, and I'd go home or go to the pub and left them there, and come in the next day, and they're all in the same clothes, smelling slightly worse. And that was just early developer, really.
Yeah.
Developer smell, yeah.
Yeah. So, Powermongers,
Yes.
is that based on the Populous?
So I joined at the end of Populous. I worked a little bit on one of the data discs, but Powermonger was my first game. This is again, sign of the times. I took over for someone who started the game and left to become a postman because he thought that was a better career move. So I took on the game from pretty much the beginning. Yeah, that was my first game for Bullfrog.
And when they showed you where they were up to with it, did you think, "Oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Do you like that kind of game?
Yeah. I love. well, I didn't know I did, to be honest. It was really started from playing a lot of the demo of Populous. I really sort of got into this genre. I also played a lot of Elite and computer people. I didn't realise it was a genre. I didn't realise it was this sort of simulation thing was a thing, right? But I just realised there was something about these games I kind of liked. So working on Powermonger was a pleasure, really, because you just had and there was no design back then. There was no design documents. You just made it up on the spot. You just try things out. So normally what would happen is Glenn Corpez, who was a brilliant sort of creative visual coder at Bullfrog, he would just design a kind of an engine and go, what can we do with this? And he'd just pass it over to people like Peter and me and Sean Cooper, and we just made games out of it. If it looked like it was going to be a strategy game, we turned it into a strategy game.
Yeah.
But there was no plan. There was never a design document to work from.
Yeah, it was more just seeing how it's developed, and then if you did
it was
like
very
something.
organic, really organic. Really organic.
Was there such a thing at that time as getting people into play test things, or was it really everyone was doing that?
No, it was too quick, really. I mean, we were just we almost just finished the game and released it. There was no real development process. There was no pre-production, production, QA release. I mean, don't think we had a tester until probably around about 95. So we're talking still a long way, a few years of using any form of QA. No, you just really... I mean, it went to the publisher, and they probably did an element of that. Yeah. But no, we never had anybody in-house with us.
What was it like strolling into, I don't know, a W.A. Smith or whatever, and finding one of your games?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, magazines as well. There's something about being in a magazine back then, if your game's in a magazine that you could buy in a W.A. Smith's. It's just amazing, And that was the only thing you could send back to your folks and go, look, Mum, Dad, this is a real job. Because my parents didn't consider it to be a real job until I was about 45. Seriously, I would go home and my mum and dad would say, he could write on the side of vans if he wanted to. He's a really good artist, he can draw anything. Didn't say, he's made games, or that didn't seem to be important. It was just, I could draw. That was the only thing they thought was any good.
Yeah, but picking up a magazine and going, look, Mum.
That helped.
Yeah.
They kept them all, which was lovely, but yes.
What do you think of theme park as an idea when you first...
I know where you're going with this. I left Bullfrog because of theme park. I thought it was absolutely... I was the only person working on that game, by the way. I was the first person on that game. I was on my own for about 3 months, something like that. Peter had gone to Japan. Theme parks were really massive in Japan, so he came back saying, we're going to do a theme park game. And I just thought, that's a kids game. Why am I doing a kids game? And he said, I want you to do big heads, because that's really big in Japan. Big heads, same size of the body. So he kind of gave me the visual look he wanted, and I hated it. I liked the first few months because we went to loads of theme parks to do research. In fact, we went to Euro Disney before it was open, and we had the whole thing to ourselves.
Wow.
For a whole day. We just went on what we wanted.
Is this like you and Peter?
Me, Peter, and Paul McLaughlin and Chris Hill, the four of us just spent a whole day. And of course you could buy beer and go on rides, and it's just perfect. But when it actually came down to making the game, I lasted about 3 months, 4 months, and I just went, I can't do this. So I was friends with the Bitmap brothers. I used to do bits and pieces for them anyway. I'd done some work on Xenon 2. I think I converted the Master System version, which was really just palletizing. I wasn't creatively involved. I was just making it work on a different system. And they said, I used to work with a guy called Dan Malone, who is the best artist I've ever met in the world. Dan was a genius, and he went to do Speedball 2 for, he did the Chaos Engine, and then he wanted to go away to India for a year, so I did Chaos Engine 2 for Bitmap Brothers. So I left Bullfrog just as they really blew up. In the 18 months I was away, they released Theme Park, Syndicate, and Magic Carpet won. So they didn't need me, did they? All their big hits came up when I left.
Did you? Well, you came back, which we'll come on to. But did you leave on good terms that first time round?
Yeah.
You always got on with
Always
Peter.
made, yeah, always got. Well, no, we always fought from the very beginning. We always fought. We always fell out. In fact, I was supposed to see him last week, and he didn't turn up. So, cheers, Peter. No, we've always had a creative kind of to and fro. Because I was the artist, and he was the programmer. So there was no designers then. You just kind of fought for ideas, and the programmers always won because they would just code in what their ideas were and ignore your work. Yeah. So it was always a bit of a fight. But no, I left on good terms, really. I think. I mean, he wasn't pleased, but I was all right with it.
Yeah, I won't push this too hard, but just he has a bit of a reputation, doesn't he? Sort of subsequently of
you either love him or you hate him.
Yeah,
but he is the hardest working person in the business. I mean, when I started, he was there before me, he was in the room before me, he'd be in the room after me. He just sat there with a fag in his mouth programming. I think some of the things with Peter, which perhaps didn't help, was when he stopped programming, because then he would talk about what the game should be. And if you're talking about what the game should be, unless you're actually putting it in the game, it may not be 100% what's in your head. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the separation from the Peter that perhaps was making the games in the early days, which were true to what his vision were, and the disconnected ones where he was probably going, it's going to do this. And of course, if you're not in the dev team, it's only going to do that if it's possible, A, and B, if people actually know they've got to do that. So I think Peter is definitely, and should be always remembered for the brilliant things he's brought to the industry, because there's so many great things he's done, really great. I mean, Populous, if he'd just done Populous, that's enough, right? But he's done Powermonger, he's done the theme park, he's, Black and White, Dungeon Keeper, Magic Carpet. I mean, there's just loads of great games there. So, I always got, there's a balance. You should have a balance.
And these big iconic titles, it seems right now to move on to what brought you back, which was Theme Hospital.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what you were brought back.
No, he's a liar as well, of course. Peter wanted me to come back, but knew that if it was something with the word theme in front of it, I probably wouldn't come back. So I was aware of Dungeon Keeper was in development as an idea, and I thought that's brilliant. You're controlling dungeon. This will be cool. So every time I said, I think I know what you want me to come back for, he was going, yeah, it's going to be great. And he just let me think it was Dungeon Keeper. And it wasn't. It was, it doesn't even make sense, Theme Hospital. I mean, Theme Park makes sense. Theme Hospital doesn't make sense. So, and nobody wanted to work on it, of course, because it was just this weird idea. So they put the two people, I was slightly on the naughty step because I'd left. Mark Webley, my long-term creative partner, it was his first time making a game. He'd been running some of the conversion team work, so he'd been converting onto different systems, but he'd never done an original game before, so they put us together. But we had no team, no budget. I don't know if you heard the music coming in, but that was all played on a MIDI by. We didn't even get a musician. We just had one of the programmers just say, I can write some MIDI tunes if you like, because we didn't have any music, so we don't have thanks.
Amazing. But I know you mentioned Mark Webley there, so I should probably just go into that a little bit. So how much of an important partnership was that, and obviously has become?
Yeah, my other wife. Or husband, whichever way, depending on who's playing what role at the time. Mark and I have just worked well together for 30 years. We're very different. We bicker constantly, but we have most respect for each other. And he's very blunt, right? So I'll come up with an idea and he'll just go, that's shit. And he'll just say it. And what annoys me is, there's some kernel in what he says is always true. There's just something in what he says that makes me go think about it again, and then I'll come back. And then it's a better idea, usually. So I like his bluntness. He's also, on Hospital, he was the programmer and I was the artist animator, and we were both designers on that game. And it was the first thing I think Bullfrog did, which was not a Peter idea. This was purely given to us because he didn't really like it either.
Right.
It was just, nobody wants to work on this game, you two go and make it up. So from there on in, we always had a close connection because we'd done that together, right?
Did he accompany you on this famous visit to an actual hospital?
Yeah.
Tell us about that. And
so,
what were you thinking there?
Theme Hospital was going to be a played-for-real medical simulator. The first graphics I did were all as realistic as I could do. It was early days of 3D, so I built all the machines to look real. In fact, some of the machines, if you've ever played Theme Hospital, some of the machines kind of look real, and some look made up and crazy, Heath Robinson. The real ones are the ones that I just didn't get around to changing. So I had real looking like heart monitors and real scanners and things like that. And all the characters looked really real. And we spent 2 weeks at Frimley Park Hospital, which was our local hospital. And we went to watch a real operation. I remember they said, right, you've got to go and get into Greens, and then you're going to go stand in the operating theatre. And this woman handed me and Mark greens, and she said, can you take all your clothes off, please? And she's just holding the greens, and we were like really nervous, and she went, oh, for God's sake. And she just passed them and turned around. Because she's so used to seeing these brilliant medical people have to get all their clothes off and get into greens and then put the change.
Yeah.
So she doesn't care what we look like, but we did. So we went into the operating theatre with a camera, and this guy, bless him, he was face down, and he had a hole he could put a basketball through in his back, and they were hammering a disc out of his spine, literally with a hammer and a chisel, just smashing it. And I was so nervous. I was videoing it, sort of doing commentary, going, oh my God, I can see right through his back. And this surgeon just went, get that bloody fool out of here now.
Where was he from?
Posh bloke, I mean. And then in the afternoon they said, right, get something to eat and then we'll go to the morgue. And I went, no, Mark, we can't do this game. This is just grim. So we made up that lunchtime in the cafeteria that we were going to make up the illnesses and make up the cures, because I couldn't have done another day researching medical procedures. So that was what changed our mind, and that changed the game forever.
Yeah. Were you stood there with your Mohicans and your hospital gowns?
Did I have a Mohican then? I think I had stupid hair, but I think it was a different type of stupid at that time.
What an image. So let's go on to, what year did you move to Lionhead?
Lionhead was after, I started a company with 3 other Bullfrog guys called Mucky Foot, and we did a game called Startopia and a game called Urban Chaos. Urban Chaos, which wasn't mine was Startopia, because it was a sim game. But Urban Chaos was credited for inspiring Grand Theft Auto, because it was
inspiring
it. Yeah. Well, there was Grand Theft Auto 1, but that was the top-down version, and we did 3D, run around an open city, go anywhere you want, take cars, hijack cars and things. But theirs was much better than ours. But there were 2 really good games. And we had 6 or 7 years of fun making games for Mucky Foot. But Mucky Foot had run its course, and then Peter came calling again for my 3rd time, and I joined to do a game called The Movies for Lionhead, yeah.
Okay, tell me about that game.
It was massive. It was the biggest thing I've worked on. We had 75 people in QA, never mind the team.
Wow.
We had 30 people designing scenes, 28 animators. It was the biggest thing I'd worked on. It was huge, massive team. Great game, but didn't do very well. It cost a fortune to make. We even built in its own movie maker, so you could actually post movies and create them and post them online before YouTube. Then YouTube came along and it kind of wasn't necessary anymore, but it was a content creation tool as well as a simulation of how to run a movie studio. Brilliant game. You couldn't make it again today. People say, oh, why don't you do the movies too? Impossible. It would take so much money and time.
Do you think it was a victim of being a little bit too ahead of its time, because the movie aspects and the clipping and stuff might have worked well?
Yeah, I think there's better ways of doing it though as well now. So it could be probably done, but the way we did it, it was all content. You just had to make lots and lots of movie scenes. And people could clip them together differently, and you could change the camera angle and change the lighting and put different props in the scene. You could cut it up. But the amount of content we created was ridiculous. But it was at a point when Lionhead was riding a crest of a wave and money was no option, so publishers were just chucking money at games, thinking money would make it a bigger game. And we were after, I think, The Sims. We were trying to beat The Sims, I think. And that was just foolish in game, really. But it was a great game. It was a high-quality game, brilliant game. It was never going to make any money back. It was just too expensive to make.
And it's this in this environment where obviously the Fable series comes in. Can you just talk about that and also tell me the pros and cons of going from those 6 guys just working in the attic to suddenly, like you say, you've got dozens of people just doing the quality
Hundreds of
testing.
people.
Yeah. What's the pros and cons of that? What had been lost? What had been gained? It's just...
Well, in the early days, you made the whole game. You know, if you were a programmer, you programmed the whole game. If you were an artist animator, you did everything. The design was a combination of just a few people talking, what if, that'd be cool. When you get to Fable time, you've got probably about 250 people. The game's going to take 4 years. Some people are just employed to do shields. You know, when you get into the games business, you don't think, oh, I'm just going to make shields in the game, or I'm going to do sword design. People want to do everything. So the days of that were gone. It was all basically producers giving you tasks, and you don't know what the game is. You're all in a little conveyor belt of development. And that's why there's been a kickback. Retro games are back, indie games are back, Kickstarters and startups are trying to make something where everybody can do what they think the industry should be about, is like 3 or 4 or 5 people sitting around going, right, what are you good at? Oh, you're a bit of a musician, you can do sound effects, great, you're doing the sound, right, you're the programmer, you're the artist, we all design, and we do it for as cheap as possible. So games shouldn't really cost millions. Because how many games can come out a year that cost 100 million? That's going to make money back. I mean, there's probably about 3 good times to sell a game in a year. If you've got a AAA game, there's now, as the run up to Christmas, it's probably March, and that's nearly it. I mean, you know, no one wants to come out in August because everyone's on holiday. So yeah, I think games are going back to a simpler time, and who cares if they only sell a few thousand or a few 100,000, because they're not costing a fortune.
Yeah. And you're credited as, I think it's creative director on Fable, the Journey. What is that? Is that basically having a hand in everything?
I took over from Peter had left at this point, so I took his job. So that's what creative director was. So I was the next person to get into that difficult chair of being responsible for why Fable wasn't any good anymore. We had to do a Connect version. This is the truth of the story. I did the Project Milo thing with Peter, which was brilliant at the beginning and horrendous at the end, which is probably why Peter left. It wasn't as fake as people think, but I have to say I'm responsible for the video, which made people think it was faked, because I faked the video. Yeah. So I did things like make Milo look off camera. Classic Star Trek. You look into the camera, you're looking at the person watching the screen, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at a video of someone, you want to see the connection between the person who's playing the experience and the person on screen looking and talking to that person. So I deliberately got the programs to move the head to look right at the girl actress who was doing the promo. Of course, smart people worked out, hey, that shouldn't happen, they should be looking at the camera. So everything was deemed as fake after that, and it wasn't. It just wasn't a game, and everyone was getting excited about it, and it became synonymous with why Connect wasn't working. Yeah. So Milo was the poster child for Connect, and it got bashed along with Connect being not what people wanted, which I understand, because it wasn't what I wanted either. I wanted a control in my hand. But I was first party Microsoft, so we had a platform to support, right? That's the way it is.
But also, you know, when you're talking about that, about how characters will connect and how where they should be looking at certain things, that's coming back to your kind of filmmaking.
Exactly, that's the
instincts. And was that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I really shouldn't have got involved. I should have let someone come in, film the software, and decide what. But I kind of came up with that concept of what that promotion should look like, and it didn't help. You're right, absolutely right. It was me trying to be an amateur director, getting it completely wrong.
Do you have any regret in that area about making films?
No, because games is brilliant, because you are literally, it's such a wonderful, And the people are fantastic. And it's a real, you know, there's no superstars in games. There's no real, you know, egos and big, there's no real, everyone's kind of on a similar trajectory. You know, there's nobody earning huge amounts different from each other. You're all on the same level, so it's very honest industry. Whereas movies, I imagine, you've got actors on a fortune, directors on a fortune, and it's just, no, I'm glad I don't do that. I probably wouldn't have been any good either. Games it's a very honest business. I mean, you're going to get some things right, you're going to get some things wrong, and it's great having that connection as well with the community. It's great that people can come in and tell you what you're doing wrong, and we do listen. We do listen to feedback, always have done. So there's this real kind of close relationship with the people that make your games, which I don't think movies have.
Yeah, there isn't that direct, what do you think of this?
Yeah, and gamers are so honest, they'll just go, that's awful. They'll just tell you.
And YouTubers.
YouTube.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'd rather hear that
Yeah.
something's not good than be blindsided by ego or anything like that.
Well, somewhere where you differ from some of the people that we often chat to on these panels is that you are still massively big and working in the industry. Tell us about creating 2 Point Studios and you know, how you find the industry just now, what still excites you.
2 Point Studios happened because I got made redundant at 50. I was at Lionhead was struggling to get Fable Legends out the door. I moved into a division of the company where I was trying to kick off new projects for Microsoft. I had an incubation team, and we did 2 or 3 ideas and trying to get them off the ground. I kind of knew it was never going to happen because they were Fable.
Yeah.
And then the inevitable thing happened, the knock on the door. And when you're made redundant at 50, you just think, oh, games, 50. I knew I could get a job as an executive or something like that, or a consultant.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's just not me. I want to be still making things. And I just thought, well, the only way I'm going to get to make a game is to take my redundancy money and start a company. So I rang Mark and just said, I think Lionhead are going to make me redundant. And he went, nah, they're never going to make you redundant. Never going to make you redundant. You'll be the last out the door. And they did. So we just spent a year setting 2 Point up. And we just knocked on doors. We went to Liverpool, spoke to micro publishers there, spoke to Team 17. We were going to kickstart something. And then Sega came a knock in and said, we were just looking for a Bullfrog type team. And then we heard you were around about. So we just came together and it happened from there.
Yeah. And at the moment, what's the kind of future looking like?
Really, I love 2 Point. It's the most... Kim's in the audience. That's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Kim. I mean, you've been down the studio, haven't you? You did. I was trying to think earlier. Did you do campus plays before we actually showed it to anybody?
I did hospital.
Hospital.
And Sacred Towers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what we're like. We just try and involve anybody who wants to. We honestly, it's an open door policy. We just love people that come and tell us what we could do better because we're all a mixture of old farts like me. I think we must have about half the team is either hitting 60 or just over 60, right? I mean, I'm hitting 60, Mark's 61, we've got 2 of the... This is now 60-year-old developers making games, and we've got also a bunch of kids as well, so there's a blend of young ideas and old farts, right? But it's lovely that to think you can make a computer game when you're 60 just seems crazy. But what I love about it is 2 Point is a place I smile every day going to work. The back end of Lionhead, it wasn't Lionhead's fault, but the back end of Lionhead was a big business. It was just, another day. So I just want to keep it like that. Keep it a small team, keep it fun, hopefully make decent games. That's really the ethos of the company. I don't want it to be any more than that.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad you're still enjoying it so much. I'm going to ask you some random questions. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to ask you some random questions, quick answers if you would. And then we'll come to you guys. What's your favourite film?
With Nell and I.
Yes. What's the best game you've ever played that you didn't make?
Elite.
Okay. What old computer do you currently have in your house?
Well, I've got loads of computers.
Okay, which one gets used the most? GameCube? What do you play on that?
Luigi's Mansion.
Cool. Who's the most talented person you've ever worked with?
Dan Malone, 100%. Dan Malone.
And if you could go back to 1982, apart from buying a house, what would you do differently?
Nothing.
Amazing. Well, I'll finish on that. For now, give Gary a round of applause. And we're going to keep Gary there for just 1 second because it's going to come out to you folks. If you can mop up the questions I didn't think of. So put your hands up. I've just walked all the way over here.
Don't be shy.
Where did the name 2 Point come from?
It's a couple of things. What's your name, by the way?
Gemma.
Hi, Gemma. It's a couple of things. It isn't 2 point perspective, but that viewpoint that you get from a draftsman's 2 point perspective looks like the camera view often our games are made in. But the real reason was, and this was 2 points of view, because Mark and I always have opposite points of view and try and meet somewhere in the middle. So it's kind of a blend of those two, really. Thank you.
Whose idea was it to put the fart noises in Theme Hospital? And
So-
how pleased were you yourselves?
So this
It entertained me immensely over and over again. So.
true story. This, and I only sorry, what was your name?
Pete.
Pete. True story, and I only found this out during making 2 Point Hospital. Adrian Moore, who did a lot of the sound engineering and was also with me on the movies, he did a lot of the sound effects for Theme Hospital, and he told me, and I'm taking him at his word here, that all the fart noises and the dropping sound in the toilet he did for real by taking a microphone and a cassette recorder into the toilet. So, and I only found that out about 6 years ago.
And on that bombshell.
Hello, Gary.
Thank you.
I was wondering about any unreleased projects that you worked for with Bullfrog or Lionhead that particularly you wish had happened.
Lots. Now, which one do we go for? I mean, there were so many. We had, actually, a lot of them did eventually become something. So things like Magic Carpet was going to just be a screensaver for Sony, and it became a game. The original Syndicate I worked on was a squad-based game, but the characters were really big. It then became a sideways platform game called Bob, blue and orange bloke, and then eventually Sean Cooper got his hands on it. So a lot of things I've got made. I think it's actually mucky foot. I wanted to redo Barbarian. I got all the rights in place, and we did a demo, and it was a 3D dungeon crawler, a bit like what Barbarian 2 was, but this was proper running through dungeons and hack and slash. And I just wanted to do something quite gratuitous again, because I'd got quite serious in the sim world, but I just wanted something a little bit B-movie, cheesy, hack and slash. So, and I thought everyone would love it, but nobody was interested. So I think that one is the one that I regret not getting the backing to make.
Hi, I'm Ben.
Hi, Ben.
I'm just curious, you briefly touched on Project Milo. Obviously,
Yeah.
there was a big controversies around that.
Yeah.
What do you think caused that? Was it a breakdown in communication and misunderstanding between teams, or just from your perspective?
I think there was a little bit of a backlash because I play safe really. I wanted it to be almost like a creation. Lightning bolt hits a tree, out comes a spiritual kind of wooden boy, Pinocchio, right? Peter wanted it to be a real child because he wanted it to feel like you cared more. And then you get this stupid backlash of, a pedo game, right? So that didn't help, because once that started to be in the sort of bottom comments, it's difficult. Microsoft got a little nervous about that. It was a true game. I mean, the technology was amazing. I mean, I remember giving Milo a picture and showing Milo the picture, puts it on the fridge, makes a comment about it. And then we had the agent for Steve. We wanted Stephen Fry to get involved because he contacted us saying, oh, this looks interesting. And we thought, oh, you could be kind of the narrator for the game. And his agent came in, and I said, look, give Milo a drawing, see what Milo does with it. And she drew this cat that was the most small, it was a figure 8 with 2 dots above his ears and just a little flick of a tail. And Milo took it and it scanned it cleanly. So it didn't always work, didn't always scan cleanly, but it took the post-it note, the same colour, the picture looked perfect. And Milo went, oh, I love that cat, I love cats, and put it on the fridge. And it blew her away. And really, Milo could have just been that. But I think what went wrong was we tried to turn it into a story. We did, a lot of quite cheesy mini games that didn't need to be. It could have been a very simple little AI tool that could remember your birthday, would say something interesting, tell you a joke. It did all that stuff, but it got turned into we gamified it, and that was the mistake I think we made.
It could just be another one as well, where it was just the wrong timing.
Yeah, today would work if it was ready now. But having said that, there was something a little bit freaky about it, I have to be honest. Another story was we brought a lot of Japanese people from Microsoft Japan, and they wanted to see Milo because they'd heard about it. And we had this brilliant program that I brought from Monkey Foot called Markadami, and he was teaching Milo's brain to remember things and do things. And it was all a bit of a Darren Brown act, so it would steal information from you and tell you things that you didn't think you told Milo. So we were just stealing things like what colour was, what music you liked, family members, things like that. But we also had to train Milo not to do anything deviant, because people would be deviant with Milo, right? So Milo had to know what penis looked like, and Milo needed to know what a swastika looked like. Right? Because we knew people would get Milo to put swastikas on the fridge and penises on his bedroom wall. So we had to train him in how people draw penises, because people draw penises differently, right? So he had everyone draw penises and swastikas and train Milo to ignore them or just scrunch them up and put them in the bin. But that's horrible, I don't like that. But at the moment he was doing that code, we had a load of VIPs walk in, and all around his desk were penis and swastikas. Let's move you over here.
I think that's a great image to leave you on. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together from 2 Point Studios. Gary Carr!
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you folks, that was brilliant. Go and enjoy yourself again in the hall at 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock, Steve? 2 o'clock? Yeah, at 2 o'clock we've got Warren Davis, Cubert legend, so see you back for that, but off you go. Thank you very much folks.